Honored guests, please take your seats. The program will begin shortly. Please welcome Salt Lake City Mayor Erin Mendenhall.
Hello. Are we ready? I'm Salt Lake City Mayor Erin Mendenhall, and I couldn't be more excited and honored to be with you to welcome to the state of Utah President Joe Biden. What an important anniversary we are marking today. 1 year since President Biden signed into law the PACT Act. My daddy, Don Robinson, was a Korean War veteran. He was not only the backbone of my family, but he, like each veteran in this country, is part of the backbone of our great nation. To our veterans, thank you for your service. Thank you for your sacrifice. And to President Biden, thank you for finally helping this country to address the needs of our brave veterans who for too long suffered with chronic illness and died from exposure to the burn pits that they were exposed to during their time of service. The PACT Act is just one of countless achievements our president has achieved in the last several years, creating over 13 million jobs, passing legislation to reduce the cost of prescription drugs, and getting inflation under control. I can't think of a more capable, a more prepared, or a better person to be fighting for us and leading our nation. Thank you, President Biden, for being here with us in Salt Lake City, and thank you for having me here today.
Please welcome Utah Governor Spencer Cox.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. It is a privilege to be here at this facility with all of you. We so appreciate your attendance today. Mayor, thank you for your remarks, and thank you for hosting us here in the capital city. On behalf of the 3.3 million Utahns in our great state, we welcome President Biden to the Beehive State. Anytime we get the opportunity to have a president of either party in our state, we appreciate this amazing opportunity that we have to collaborate, to work closely together, to push back on policies with which we disagree, and to find areas of common ground. And I just want to reiterate that last part a little bit. There has been some question over whether or not the governor of the state of Utah would welcome the president of a different party. I think it's insane that we are having those conversations in our country today. I so appreciate my blue state partners, governors who welcomed President Trump, and we welcome President Biden here. We honor this office of the presidency. When the president succeeds, America succeeds, and we want to find ways to work together. We also do want to push back when we disagree, and I think we've gotten really good at that part. But we need to remember the other part of that equation that makes us so proud to be Americans. Certainly, there is one thing that we all unequivocally agree on, and that is a deep admiration and gratitude for the veterans among us. Thank you to the brave women and men we have visited with over the past few days, those who have served our country, worn the uniform of our country, sacrificed their very lives, their health, and their families to make our country the special place that it is today. We honor you. Thank you for your service. Now, we have about 138,000 military veterans in Utah, and not only have they already sacrificed for our country, but they continue serving in so many important and powerful ways. We estimate that they, and I don't like to get always into the money side of things, but I think it's important to know that they bring about $3 billion in economic impact to our state. It's how important veterans are in what we're trying to accomplish here. We are grateful to Congress and the President for recognizing their important service and the passage of the PACT Act, which addresses the burn pit exposure during the Gulf War, the Kosovo War, Afghanistan, and Iraq, as well as those exposed and injured by toxins in the water at Camp Lejeune. Now, more than 3,000 Utah veterans have already submitted claims related to the PACT Act, and approximately 2,800 of those have already been completed, totaling almost $12 million in retroactive payments. They have been processed fairly quickly in less than 4 months, and as government goes, that's very quickly. Thank you. I want to give a special shout out to our Department of Military and Veterans Affairs, who have helped almost 4,000 veterans file claims within the past year of all different types. I truly applaud your efforts, and I want to recognize the many organizations and individuals in Utah who work together to serve our military members, veterans, and their families. We have incredible partnerships with the VA, the Department of Labor, the Department of Defense, our state legislature, local officials, our military bases, academic institutions, our business community, and veterans and military organizations, some of whom are here with us today. One thing is true. Everywhere I go, as I talk to our veterans and those who are involved in the Department of Defense right now, Utah is known as a patriotic state. We care deeply about the men and women in uniform who serve here, who are serving now, and who've served before, and I'm proud to be the governor of a great state who cares about our veterans. Now, we encourage veterans and families throughout Utah to connect with Veterans Service Office at our department or with other veterans organizations to look into assisting and filing claims. Now, we know that the PACT Act has special meaning to President Biden, given his late son Beau's service and sacrifice. Mr. President, we thank you for the sacrifice of you and your family, and we're grateful to have you here honoring veterans in the Beehive State. Thank you so much.
And the president will be up at that podium shortly. The governor thanking the president for coming, thanking him for supporting veterans. The governor really emphasizing what his approach has been publicly, which is that his philosophy of governing is that you can disagree, but you can disagree without it's often said without being disagreeable. He has said differently, you can disagree constructively. Now we have a whole lot of security there. We assume the president is going to be on that podium shortly, and you are not going to miss anything he has to say. Those staff members are getting the podium prepared. They want to make sure that everything is set specifically for the president. So much going into anything that he does. And when the president speaks, see what they're doing right there? That's the seal of the President of the United States. That doesn't go on a podium until it actually is the President of the United States who is behind the podium. So as that is put up, we're going to go to a very quick break, but don't worry, we're going to come right back as soon as the president starts speaking. We'll be right back.
Yeah, it was unlike anything I've ever seen.
What's humbling is just community members coming out. We had strangers with buckets in our basement. This is what happens in Utah.
Floods, broke windows. We thought we better come and help.
People are really nice up here.
It was no bother for these friends and neighbors to go without sleep last night, because that's the way we do things here in Utah.
Fresh produce is the best produce. That's why at Smith's, we invest in local farmers to bring you the freshest seasonal picks. So no matter how you shop, your local produce always tastes as fresh as it gets. Smith's, fresh for everyone.
Sorry about that car accident. Got that insurance claim check for you.
I got a call swap.
You forgot your check.
We'll make sure you get the help you deserve, and we only get paid after you win.
One call, that's all.
801-444-4444.
Here's your handheld burrito.
All right. Costa Vita's newest burritos are loaded with the same fresh, never frozen ingredients, including spicy grilled chicken and ultra tender sweet pork. But with our handheld burritos, all our mouthwatering ingredients are inside the tortilla.
Please welcome U.S. Army veteran Erica Smith.
Good morning. My name is Erica Smith, and at 17, I became a soldier. In my 7-year career as a Black Hawk crew chief, I worked with many phenomenal people, and I deployed to Iraq in 2019. On the flights overseas, we were constantly watching for threats, but we didn't know about the silent threats we saw on a regular basis. Ponds of oil lit on fire, waste and garbage being burned, and the fuel and chemicals used on the aircraft. In 2022, during a spinal scan for a separate injury, a mass was discovered on my right kidney. I was just 23 with no family history of cancer. I ate right, I worked out, and I never smoked. Nevertheless, it was cancer, and it was growing fast. Shortly after, a friend from deployment let me know he had cancer in his kidney as well. I filed a claim with the VA immediately. Thankfully, the PACT Act reduced my paperwork burden, and it covered my illness. By the time I had my kidney removed in October of 2022, I had already begun receiving increased benefits that helped me buy my first house. I'm so grateful for the PACT Act, and I encourage other veterans to take advantage of the benefits. The military gave me the courage to take risks, and the PACT Act gave me the stability to endure no matter the outcome. Now, it's my honor to introduce the President of the United States, Joe Biden.
Please, take a seat if you have one. Sarge, thank you for that introduction. You know, it's important for two reasons. One, I have been in and out of Iraq and Afghanistan over 38 times, and I don't think most people know, this audience may know, how many women we have in combat. How many women are not only doing their part, but doing jobs that most people didn't think women would do or could do. And the Sarge is an example of just that. You know, Black Hawk helicopter is, anyway, I won't go into it all, but the point is that, you know, Sarge, what happened to you has happened to thousands of people. Governor and I talked about that earlier, the governor and I, about what, you know, you and your fellow veterans are the heart, the soul, and the very spine and sinew of this generation. I mean, that's a fact. You know, only 1% of you volunteer to protect all of us. That's what it is. And it's all volunteer. And I want to thank Dr. Angela Williams and the great team here at Salt Lake City VA for hosting us, for taking care of our heroes. Mayor Mendenhall, thank you for the passport into the city. I appreciate that opportunity. And Governor Spencer Cox, thank you for your hospitality, but much more importantly, thank you for taking care of our veterans and for bringing along your beautiful family. And by the way, you know, years ago, this is a little ad lib here, but years ago when John Kerry was the nominee for president of the Democratic Party, he talked with me about the possibility of being vice president. And on his ticket, and we're old friends. I said, no, I didn't want to be vice president. But had I known that as vice president I get Secret Service, and had I known that meant my daughters had Secret Service, and my granddaughters, I would have fought even harder for him at the time. And now, I have a bunch of grandchildren. They all have Secret Service, and my daughter has Secret Service, and you know, it's just wonderful. I'm not sure what they think about it, but it's just wonderful. Anyway, thank you very, very much. And look, before I begin, I want to say a word about the devastating wildfires that have claimed at least 36 lives in Maui and Hawaii. We have just approved a major disaster declaration for Hawaii, which will get aid into the hands of the people desperately needing help now. They've lost, anyone who's lost a loved one whose home has been damaged or destroyed is going to get help immediately. And I've directed that we surge support to these brave firefighters and first responders and emergency personnel working round the clock there, risking their lives. I just got off the phone before I got here for a long conversation with Governor Josh Green this morning. Let him know I'm going to make sure the state has everything it needs from the federal government to recover. The FEMA Administrator Griswold will be in Maui tomorrow, and I've directed her to streamline any process with requests for help and survivors registered for immediate federal assistance without delay. FEMA is surging disaster assistance personnel on the island, and they're going to help survivors get access to federal assistance. And you know, anybody who wants to know out there where to go if this is televised, that they can go to disasterassistance.gov, disasterassistance.gov, to learn if you're eligible for assistance. And I've ordered all available federal assets on the island, including the U.S. Coast Guard, the Navy 3rd Fleet, and the U.S. Army, to assist local emergency response crews along with the Hawaiian National Guard. We're working as quickly as possible to fight these fires and evacuate residents and tourists. In the meantime, our prayers with the people of Hawaii, but not just our prayers. Every asset we have will be available to them, and they've seen their homes, their business destroyed, and some have lost loved ones, and it's not over yet. But now, for the reason I'm here today. I've said it many times before. When I started saying it 30 years ago, I got criticized occasionally for saying it. I said, we have many obligations as a nation, but we only have one truly sacred obligation, and that's to equip those we send into harm's way and care for them and their families when they come home and when they don't. 1 year ago today, we met that sacred obligation when I signed, after fighting so damn hard for the PACT Act, to sign it into law. And I want to thank all the veterans organizations for helping to make that happen, because it matters. The PACT Act is one of the most significant laws ever signed to help veterans exposed to toxic materials and help their families recover, as well as receive compensation. You remember what we mean by burn pits. You know, when we first started using the phrase burn pits, people kind of looked at us. But a burn pit is what you saw, basically the giant burn pit. The first one everybody was aware of was in 9/11 when the buildings came down. Remember all those firemen that died of cancer and how they got covered? Well, when firefighters first responded, that's what happened. Now, the burn pits in Iraq, where we're talking about, and in other countries, Afghanistan, even in parts of throughout the Middle East, they're the size of football fields, up to 100 yards long, 20 yards to 30 yards wide, and 8 to 10 feet deep. And everything you can imagine is thrown into these pits to incinerate them. The wastes of war, tires, poisonous chemicals, jet fuel, and so much more. Toxic smoke, thick with poison, spreads through the air and into the lungs of our troops and their hooches where they live nearby these facilities. I know, I've been there in Iraq and Afghanistan. I've seen them. And you can smell it in the air. You can sometimes see it. And when these troops came home, many of them the fittest and best trained warriors that we ever sent anywhere were exposed to these burn pits. They weren't the same. And thousands of troops had to live in their hooches not far from proximity from these burn pits. The one in Iraq, my son was about 400 yards from one of the burn pits, living there for a year in his hooch. They breathe that toxic material sometimes for months at a time. In the case of my son and his buddies, for an entire year, causing headaches, numbness, dizziness, cancer. This is not about my son, but just an example of how close it was. My son, Bo, was one of those persons. He went the fittest guy in his unit and came home and and he came home but died of glioblastoma. It's personal for my family, but it's also personal for so many of you. Secretary of the VA, McDonough, and I just had a long talk. He couldn't be here today, but he can tell you we're determined to address this problem, come hell or high water, and compensate these veterans and their families who have suffered from the consequences of this tragedy. It was part of my unity agenda, as I called it, when I did my first State of the Union, last State of the Union, to try to bring the country together on things I thought we all could agree on. First was beating the opioid epidemic, and we're working like hell on that, tackling the mental health crisis, and there is a mental health crisis in America. Supporting our veterans. Look, I delivered that speech in March of last year, and a few months later, in August, with veterans groups making the case and never giving up, the bipartisan PACT Act was on my desk to sign into law. Don't tell me we can't get things done when we work together. Democrats and Republicans work together to get that done. In particular, I want to thank Senator John Tester, the chair of the Senate Veterans Affairs Committee, and Representative Mark Takano as well, the ranking member of the House Veterans Affairs Committee, for their leadership. They never stopped fighting on behalf of the veterans and their families. We learned a horrible lesson after Vietnam, how harmful effects of exposure to Agent Orange took years to manifest themselves in veterans, leaving too many veterans unable to access care when they needed it and deserved it. And they had to prove beyond a reasonable doubt that that was the cause of their problem, which was difficult to prove in the long term. That's why I supported the Agent Orange Act of 1991, supporting veterans exposed to the harmful substances in Vietnam. Well, I don't want to see that again. The PACT Act means today's veterans and their families won't suffer the same painful, frustrating delays and denials. And here's what the law does. It empowers the Veterans Administration, the VA, to move quicker to determine if a veteran qualifies for the benefits of the law. Benefits like monthly disability compensation and regular toxic exposure screenings. It also means new facilities, new research, and more healthcare workers at VA hospitals. It includes nearly, and one of the veterans raised this to me today, nearly $30 million for new outpatient clinics right here in Salt Lake City, right here. And for families who have suffered the ultimate loss, it means potential access to life insurance, tuition benefits for their surviving family members, home loan assistance, and monthly stipends, which cannot replace one of the breadwinners in their home, but it sure in hell can help. For example, surviving spouse of a veteran who died from toxic illness with 2 children could be eligible for roughly $2,300 a month for the rest of his or her life. I'm proud to announce that over 340,000 veteran survivors are already benefiting the law just 1 year after it was signed, including over 2,000 veterans here in Utah. Veterans are getting the care they deserve in every corner of the country. For example, there's an Army veteran served in Iraq now receiving care for prostate cancer at the VA in Seattle. He heard about the PACT Act and he applied for benefits the day I signed the law. Because he's already a VA patient, he didn't need to submit medical records or get separate exams. His application was approved. He's now received retroactive payments from the date the law was signed. Another Army veteran, now in New Hampshire National Guard with multiple deployments to Iraq and Kuwait, learned that he had that a friend and a soldier she deployed with were diagnosed with breast cancer. Just in case, she decided to get toxic exposure screening free at all veterans enrolled in the VA healthcare. She too was diagnosed with breast cancer. They caught the cancer early and she's currently being treated for it. And she's being granted 100% service-connected eligibility under the PACT Act, tripling her monthly payment benefits. For folks, it matters. This matters. Folks, we have a moral obligation. This goes beyond the financial. We have a moral obligation to respond to this. And I'm here today to spread the word so every veteran or surviving family member knows how to access benefits of this law. Because these conditions have already taken such a toll on so many veterans and their families, I directed the Department of Veterans Affairs to treat all 23 presumptive conditions in this law as applicable immediately, like chronic bronchitis. Chronic bronchitis, asthma, many types of cancer, including any type of reproductive cancer. And something we've been fighting for a long time. Veterans-era veterans, Vietnam-era veterans are entitled to compensation for hypertension. This is now the law. Let me give you an example of why it matters. The widow of a 28-year Army veteran in Connecticut applied for survivor benefits after her husband died from gastrointestinal cancer. That was before the PACT Act was passed, and her claim was denied. In April of this year, she learned about the PACT Act and reapplied. 1 month later, because of her husband's cancer, she's now presumed to be a service-connected under the PACT Act she claimed was approved. Now she's eligible for survivor's compensation for her son and further his education and the GI Bill. I'm urging veterans from those decades of war in Vietnam and Iraq, Afghanistan.
Shop your Utah Toyota dealers. Toyota, let's go places.
Sports with Morgan Vance, only on Fox 13 News.
Bathfitter is your best choice for your bath remodel. Hi, I'm Rick Booman.
And I'm Kayla Booman with Bathfitter. We can do any tub, any shower, or convert your tub to a shower. Trust Bathfitter
/PACT. File a claim or apply for VA health care now. Or go to your local VA hospital and reach out to the Veteran Service Organization, like Disabled American Veterans, American Legion, Wounded Warriors Project, the Veterans of Foreign Wars, if you need additional assistance. There's no deadline to submit a claim, but if you want to be eligible to receive retroactive benefits for last year, you have to sign up by Monday. So apply today. The VA will move as quickly as possible to resolve your claim and get the benefits you deserve. We're also taking other important steps to help the nation's veterans and service members. We're helping connect veterans to registered apprentice programs so they can transfer the skills they learned in the military to good-paying jobs here at home now that we're having the largest building boom in 40 years. The VA is launching a Transition Assistance Grant Program for organizations that help veterans and their spouses find jobs when they leave the military. The unemployment rate for veterans has hit an all-time low. It is now at 2.8%. 2.8%. And we're damn proud of that. We've made that a priority since we got in office. This spring, I signed an executive order directing the VA to cut red tape and give veterans who need assistance at home more flexibility in picking who will be their caregiver. Earlier this summer, I went to North Carolina, and I signed an executive order at Fort Liberty. It's called the most comprehensive set of administrative actions in the history of this, and to support the economic security of military veterans, their spouses, caregivers, and survivors. Like making it easier for a military spouse to find a job in the federal government, expanding access to child care for military families. You know, when I first took office, I signed the American Rescue Plan, which invested $17 billion for veterans' health care, including mental health care and suicide prevention, to deal with the fact that more veterans have been and continue to die of suicide than in battle over the past 2 decades. More veterans die of suicide. And all the stories I heard in my home state, people would call up and looking for help. My husband, he needs help. He couldn't get through. Get back to you. 17 a day dying of suicide nationwide. 17 a day. Even one veteran dying of suicide, particularly because he couldn't get the help immediately. There's one too many. The VA is doing everything it can do, including expanding mental health screening, increasing access to legal financial support, hiring more mental health professionals, which was one. Where's my commander that was here? One that you brought up. We're hiring more. We're hiring. including through a proven program that recruits veterans to help other veterans understand what they're going through to get the help they need. I can notice, stop for another second. You know, one of the things about the military, you're taught to be tough, stand alone, do what you need to do. And it's awful hard when you're having problems and you think you have a mental health problem to ask for help. It's really hard. There's no difference between having a mental health problem and breaking your arm or your leg. No difference. And you should not be worried about asking for help any more than you would if you broke your leg. We have to make sure people know there's nothing to be ashamed of in seeking that help. You know, think about this. I don't know how many of my tens of thousands of miles I've traveled through war zones. I don't know anybody who would not wonder whether or not what these veterans have seen would cause post-traumatic stress. It's enormous. It's an enormous problem. They just need help to get through this. We're working to end veterans' homelessness as well. No one should be homeless in this country, especially not those who served it, period. Last year, the VA found permanent housing for over 40,000 veterans and set a goal of permanently housing at least another 38,000 this year. And I'm proposing that the Congress join in and triple the number of rental assistance vouchers for extremely low-income veterans. Now. In securing a bipartisan budget agreement earlier this summer and preventing an economic collapse, we stopped draconian cuts in veteran services. That agreement including dedicated funding for our veterans' health so that the health care of those who serve so bravely in this country won't be used as a bargaining chip going forward to try to get other things cut. The agreement also fully funds the PACT Act and expands nutrition benefits that will now be available to our veterans. After serving this nation, no veteran should go hungry. No veteran should go hungry. Just 2 weeks ago, I signed an executive order to significantly strengthen how the military handles sexual assault. We're moving the authority for addressing sexual assault claims to specialized independent military unit outside the chain of command. That was a long time in coming, but it's a big deal. And we all owe a thanks to Senator Gillibrand in New York for her leadership in this, so she did not give up till she got it done. And there's more to do, but we've made a lot of progress, and we've got to keep going. Let me close with this. After I signed the PACT Act into law last August, I handed the pen as a tradition. When you sign a piece of legislation, particularly a significant piece, you have the people who are responsible for getting it done for you on the stage with you when you sign it. And you traditionally give the pen to the most consequential person who helped that happen. We got finished, and I signed the pen to the widow and daughter of Sergeant First Class Heath Robinson, a veteran for whom the bill was named. His widow was also my wife's guest at the State of the Union. A family that suffered the greatest of losses, but turned their pain into purpose. I handed the pen, not to the mother, but to Sergeant Robinson's little girl, a lovely little kid sitting next to me. And she looked at me, and she said, "Thank you for my daddy. Thank you for my daddy." I think she was talking for all of us. Everyone who fought so hard came together to keep our promise to the veterans and to keep faith with our heroes. That's courage. That's character. That's who all of you are. Not hyperbole. I want to thank you all. Democrat, Republicans, Independents, for your work to get this bill to my desk and to get it signed. As I said, I was going to sign that bill come hell or high water, no matter how long I had to keep the Congress in. It's just another reminder of what we know to be true. We are the United States of America. There's nothing beyond our capacity when we decide to work together to get it done. We never fail when we do that, never on any major issue. So God bless you all, and let's continue to work together. And God save our veterans. Thank you.
Letting some of the band play out as you can listen to what's going on. The president walking off stage after delivering remarks that began businesslike and ended with passion. Some familiar faces there. We saw him greet Luz Escamilla, the Senate Minority Leader, a Democratic senator from Salt Lake City, state senator, we should say. A historic day where President Biden visits Salt Lake City, visits Utah for the first time in his presidency. We don't always see Democratic presidents, especially at events like this, marking an occasion like the anniversary of a major act being signed. In that room, our own Bob Evans. Bob was in there to talk with veterans who are there and to see exactly what goes on. And Bob, I know that you are the proud parent of a young man who served in the Navy, and so I'm sure there are some special thoughts that you have about that. But let's just set the scene for us. What's happening in that room? What did you see?
Well, I tell you what, Max. Yes, in fact, to answer your first query, we are very proud of our veteran son who served in the Navy. He and his wife both served in the Navy. We're very proud. President Biden is right now greeting the veterans who have been assembled from Utah, who are honored at this event. He greeted them before the event began. He's shaking their hands now and greeting the other folks who have come to honor veterans and congratulate them on the passage of the PACT Act and its signing 1 year ago today. The president brought up a number of things in his speech that brought a great response from the crowd. He said that Vietnam veterans have had to prove back in their day that Agent Orange had in fact caused their medical problems. He says he does not want to repeat that, especially with the burn pits. He explained what the burn pits are and how people are getting very sick from being exposed to the toxic smoke that comes from them. And he alliterated how the PACT Act is being used to bless the lives of 330,000 veterans now since the PACT Act was signed a year ago. He said, and he gave examples of soldiers and their families who are receiving the benefits and their lives are being improved and their conditions are being treated because of the PACT Act. He says it is law and that he has directed the Veterans Affairs, the Director of Veterans Affairs and the Veterans Administration to treat all 23 presumptive illnesses mentioned in the PACT Act, everything from breathing conditions to specific types of cancer. And so that brought a rousing response from the crowd. He reminded everyone that there is no deadline to file a claim with the PACT Act, but did say that for retroactive claims, that deadline is this coming Monday. The deadline originally was last night, but we got word today that the deadline has now been extended to next Monday. So if you were going to file a claim and retroactively, you need to do that online by Monday. He gave the website to go to, and it is, let me see, I have it here in my notes, yes, va.gov/PACT, va.gov/PACT. As he wound up his comments, he thanked everyone for their service to our nation and for the great sacrifices they and their families have made. And he promised them that come hell or high water, in his words, they were not going to abandon our veterans, and that they will receive the care that they need and they deserve after serving our country so faithfully all this time. Max, back to you.
Yeah, and Bob, we are going to stay in that room with you, but I do want to update our viewers a little bit on what we heard, news that was made there as the president is in Salt Lake City. He still is the president, looking at what's going on around the country, and he did make news because the Hawaii is going through some incredible incredible damage and even the loss of life from fires there, and they've been asking for federal help. The president announcing in his speech here in Salt Lake City that they did make a major disaster declaration for Maui. That was at the beginning of the speech. And then, Bob, getting to a little bit of what was happening in that room, you heard, and our viewers didn't get the chance to hear, the woman who introduced the president, a sergeant and a soldier, Erica Smith, a Black Hawk crew chief, who after serving in Iraq, and she became a soldier at 17 years old, after serving in Iraq, found herself with a growth on her kidney, had to have a kidney removed, and has benefited from this. And Bob, along with that, the president also made a connection that I haven't heard him make before, and he didn't directly say one came from the other, but that his son, Bo, when he was in Iraq, stationed in Iraq as a military lawyer, he was stationed close to one of these toxic burn pits, and the president making that point in a speech where he also mentions that his son died of glioblastoma, a particularly devastating and deadly form of brain cancer. That connection I haven't heard him make so directly before, but Bob, those kinds of personal touches as you were hearing in that room. Any comments?
Well, you're right, Max. In fact, I believe you're correct. This is the first time we have heard the president refer to his son's terminal cancer as perhaps being connected to his service in Iraq. If that was the case, and who can say at this point, if that is the case, then it would be a first that he made that connection. I wanted to move out of the way. The president is greeting members of the crowd here still. People getting selfies, people with this rare opportunity to shake the hand of the leader of the free world. As Governor Cox said before the president came into the room, that he is welcome in Utah anytime. And it doesn't matter what party you are a member of. We want you here. We respect the office and are grateful that he would come.
Yeah, and Bob, he also, at the end...
As we told you before, as we said before, Max, the president likes to take his time chatting with people and visiting with them. He is a genuine person, and regardless of political persuasions, he is as personable as the day is long, Max.
Yeah, and that's, that the Secret Service agents around him, this is their least favorite time because they are looking closely and examining every single person he comes in contact with. Of course, this crowd has been vetted, and these folks, there's not danger there. But, that's Sandra Hollins, Representative Sandra Hollins, who he's speaking with, Utah House member. A Democrat representing Salt Lake City, a portion of Salt Lake City, and he's going on to talk to others here in the crowd. Bob, another thing that he did touch on, he talked about mental health and veterans and mental health, and it made a very clear point, and something that I'm sure resonates, which is that it's hard for many people, and probably for if you're thinking about who is the person who signs up, who enlists in the military. They might be someone who's unlikely to ask for help and unlikely to say that they need mental health help. because they want to tough it out. They're people who believe in their own ability to make it through things, and of course they should. But he was talking about mental health being so serious
Max,
because more veterans die of suicide than anything else.
Yeah, Max, let me jump in here and reiterate what you're saying and what the president said. The veterans and the soldiers who serve our nation are taught to be tough. It is ingrained in their training. He said, you are taught to be tough. You are not necessarily taught to ask for help. And he said that having a mental illness is every bit as legitimate as breaking your leg or breaking your arm. You need help. And I think because that is a relatively new thought, especially for our veterans who have been trained to be tough and to just swallow the kinds of things that we see in war, it is a refreshing thing to see the president and others speak out so strongly in regard to the need for those who have PTSD and those who are suffering with mental health issues to reach out for help and to get the help that they need. And as you mentioned, yes, 17 veterans a day we are losing to suicide. 17 veterans a day, and he says that has to end. That just has to end. The suicide rate is just unacceptable right now, especially among the veterans.
Yeah, and that's something, Bob. Such a great point, and it's something that's been a silent epidemic for most of our veterans throughout American history, and finally being addressed with those veterans who we have amongst us now. But perhaps, like that statistic you said, it can't possibly be being addressed enough if we are having 17 a day. Now, as the president is going through this crowd, another thing to mention, the politics of this all. There's always a little bit of people questioning why is a Democrat going to Utah, one of the reddest states in the country? Well, he is going to go to a fundraiser later today, and Park City is always, that's where he's going. That is always a place where a Democrat can go and get quite a lot of money for their campaign. But I say that in advance of saying this is a real event, and while it might be a politically astute event to hold something, no one's anti-veteran, and especially in a red state, to headline a veterans event. This is a very real event where he's celebrating the anniversary of this act and a heartfelt speech from him. But he chose Utah to do that, while he addressed in the purple state of Arizona new protections for the area around the Grand Canyon, somewhat more controversial, and then went to New Mexico, which has become something of a Democratic state. President's Democratic candidates tend to win there, and he addressed climate change directly. So coming to Utah, addressing an issue that's not going to get any pushback from either party, and he is. He's taking his time with the crowd, and you mentioned Governor Cox there. Governor Cox actually got to ride with him in the limo yesterday. Yeah, Bob.
Yes, in fact, it was interesting to watch the amount of time that Governor Cox spent with the president yesterday as he greeted him on the tarmac and then rode in the limousine with him. I saw Jennifer Napier-Pierce, who works with the governor's office, as we were coming in, and I asked her, what did the governor and the president talk about yesterday? And she got this sly grin on her face, and I said, well, you can be sure that I'm going to ask him as soon as I get the chance. And of course, Fox 13 News political reporter Ben Winslow, who was close by, said, no, I'm going to ask him when I get the chance. But the interesting thing is that the president and Governor Cox are both personable people and love to talk to other people. And so you can imagine what they were talking about. And as the governor said, we're not afraid in this state to push back politically if we don't agree with things. And so, and that's true with either party, Democrat or Republican. As the president continues to greet, he's greeting Doug Owens, who has run for Congress in the past and whose father, Wayne Owen, served as a congressman from Utah many years ago. He's now greeting Sandra Hollins, state representative in the Utah legislature, and other Democrats who have lined up to greet him. This, of course, now, one of the points I wanted to make, Max, is that the president is well aware of Utah's and the polling in Utah for President Trump and the other Republicans. He realizes that there is an opportunity here to perhaps make some political ground by coming here and greeting and being seen here, even in a Republican stronghold. And so it makes sense on this three-state tour of the West to come to Utah, celebrate the PACT Act, and get some political mileage out of this as well.
And no matter your party, everyone should acknowledge Utah's the best state in the country. I always like to throw that in, but
without question. Without question.
We want to keep you with us, but we also and Bob, we're so glad that you are out there reporting on site there. Thank you for that. We also have our colleague Spencer Joseph, who is there at the VA, not inside. We'll keep on watching the president talking to Utahns inside the VA, but we want to hear from Spencer outside the VA. Spencer, I imagine that motorcade is getting ready. I wonder if has the press corps started coming out to get in their vans yet, or are things still pretty quiet out there?
Not quite. The press corps is not in their vans. That's these transit vans that are right behind me. But Secret Service has prepared all of these vehicles. The two identical Cadillacs known as the Beast is basically they're kind of tucked in behind all of these black SUVs that are just behind me. So as you could see, there are some people over to my left that are definitely holding their phones out, getting ready for the president to depart. Obviously, he's still shaking hands inside, listening into your conversation with Bob. Max, this is a momentous day for so many people. I've talked with some of these individuals who were out here earlier when the motorcade arrived, as well as those individuals that are here now. Some of them are University of Utah students who are, just hoping to catch that glimpse of the president. Some of them are VA employees here on campus that just did not want to miss this moment. And in fact, we had some patients from nearby houses and facilities that are around us here at the VA that are out here as well, looking around. Above us in the sky, we've got what sounds like fighter jets. I've seen a couple of F-35s, fighter jets, not sure if they're from Hill Air Force Base, but flying overhead, as well as the DPS helicopter that's circling around us right now. But this motorcade is getting ready to go as the president continues inside to shake hands and talk with those officials here in Utah. But I think so many are looking to see maybe just catch a glimpse of him out here outside the VA facility. And
Spencer, we always wonder with a presidential visit, this president has his detractors, and have we heard anything about protests at any point along either his route or there at the VA?
There were a couple of people along his route, I believe along 500 South as he was coming from downtown, that were holding up signs for various causes. I don't know that I would consider them protesters per se, as they were just trying to maybe bring awareness to certain causes, holding up signs with websites and things like that. That's what's happening up here at the VA, at least from what we've seen. A lot of people trying to get their message out there as the president passes, and of course, you've seen it before, how fast these motorcades go. All of those motorcycles out in front from the Unified Police Department, Salt Lake City Police Department, Utah Highway Patrol, and then the vehicles that the president rides in drive very quickly. So I think he passed them in a matter of moments, but lots of people holding up signs and hoping to get their message out there. Yeah,
and Spencer, I discovered a whole new home game that our viewers are welcome to participate in with you can call it the Presidential Motorcade home game. Just get on whatever device you have that you use for Google Maps or for Apple Maps or whatever. As long as it has traffic on it, then you will see on the president, you'll know where the presidential route is because there will be big red lines for in every direction except where the president is going, except for his car. And that was my commute.
It's green where the president's going,
yes,
but not where everyone. Okay, all right, that makes sense.
And so, my commute home last night, I got to play that game on my little video in my truck. It showed me, oh yeah, red here, that's where I'm stopped. Red over there, yeah, they're all stopped too. And it's right along, the motorcade route because you see the red on your traffic map.
That's exactly what happened to us when we were leaving the airport last night, right after President Biden's arrival. We saw the way that the motorcade went, and that was blocked off, but it was completely empty. Every other street was completely solid traffic. So I played that game too last night, coming out of the Roland R. Wright Air National Guard base with Air Force One landing. One thing I do want to mention real quick about the motorcade that we're being told is that after this, he will be heading up to Park City, as we've said, for a private fundraising event. Not sure if this motorcade will go back to Salt Lake International, where he will take off from Marine One, or whether he will go straight there in this motorcade. We're not sure. But I do know that Salt Lake's Mayor Aaron Mendenhall and Salt Lake County Mayor Jenny Wilson will be attending that fundraiser and riding in this motorcade. Not sure with the president, but at least along for the ride. So we did learn that this afternoon.
Well, Spencer, if you get a chance to talk to the president, let him know that trip up Parley's from the U, that's going to be a lot quicker than getting back to Marine One. Just if he's wondering and wants some traffic advice from you and from me.
Yeah, and Max, do you have a lot of experience with Marine One and flight times compared to traffic up Parley's?
No, I've flown in a helicopter 3 times in my life. I enjoyed it, but that's it. Yeah.
Well, hopefully one day soon, Max.
I doubt it. It's not really a bucket list thing for me, but thanks, Spencer, so much for giving us a little bit of the view there from outside of the VA. And of course, we're going to go back to you as things go on. But man, this president, he loves to talk, and we've had presidents at different times. There are some who are more introverted, and then there are those who love to talk. Those who love to talk included Bill Clinton, famous for being late to everything because he always stopped and talked to folks. George W. Bush, very personable. Barack Obama, always known as a very nice person, but somebody who also was more introverted, wasn't someone who glad-handing was not his favorite thing about being in politics. President Trump, somewhere in between. Of course, he has that big personality that kind of dominates whatever room is there. But President Biden soaking in this crowd, looking as closely as I can here. I think he might be talking to Jenny Wilson, but on the screen I'm looking at, it's not completely clear if that is the case as he makes his way through the room. But a whole lot of folks who want to talk to the president, and the president letting them, nope, no, I don't, that's not Jenny Wilson who he's talking with. I was wrong. We finally got a kind of a clear view of that. We are going to continue covering this. Let me go, we're going to go back to Bob, who is in the room there. And Bob, you've had a chance to take a few breaths and to look around. Has the crowd started dwindling, or is everyone still just kind of packed in and excited that they're in the presence of the president?
Well, I tell you what, Max, the leader of the free world doesn't come to Utah very much, and so there are a lot of folks who continue to linger. Dignitaries along with and veterans and others who are just happy to be here. The president, as you have been noting, has been greeting each one of them and taking enough time with each person to make them feel good in his presence. Now, mind you, he is surrounded not only by the crowd, but he's got at least 4 or 5 Secret Service agents right at his back and ready to take care of business if that is necessary. But this has been such a friendly crowd and such a wonderful place for him to come and greet people that the likelihood of that going on, it's hard to imagine in this setting.
Yeah, and when you talk,
as Spencer has been pointing out, Go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say, Bob, it is perhaps a correction for us as we, now not correcting anything we've said. What I mean is a correction to some of the conversation surrounding this president, where there's conversation about him being the oldest president to ever hold the office and perhaps losing a step. I would have been worn out a whole long time before this if I were being approached by that many people. So he certainly at least has endurance in this way, Bob, as you've been witnessing.
Absolutely, Max. This is the last of a 3-state stop, as you have pointed out before. And as we have spoken, and here he's taking a selfie with someone, I wish I could identify them. President taking the picture himself. Full of personality, but as we were saying, this is the last of 3 stops out here in the West before going back to the White House. And I sensed at the beginning of his comments that his energy may have been a little bit low. And I was thinking that, but then as he went along, the veterans' well-being and their health care and the respect that we need to have for them invigorated him in a way that had him speaking very forcefully at points during his comments, and anyone who would think that this is a president who does not have the vitality to move forward should have been in the room today to see what we have seen as he continues to greet this crowd with enthusiasm and vigor.
Yeah, and you mentioned surrounded by security. This is the day after a pretty stunning event, and it's not something we've addressed yet in our coverage on the news at noon of this presidential visit. The president and of course the Secret Service fully aware that just yesterday FBI agents went to the home of a man who online had posted threats towards this president, and in the course of that had the FBI agents confronted that man, shots fired, that man died, and it's going to take us some time to know what happened there, what comes of the investigation into that. Certainly something that colors a presidential visit and not at all common. Very unusual for that kind of circumstance, and something that we have not seen in Utah in relation to federal agents, and so really something. But I'm going to check. My producer was just telling me something that I didn't fully hear. All right, we're going to go to Spencer Joseph, who is outside the VA. Spencer, you have something new to tell us.
I do, and Max, it seems like the president listened to you, because I just got an update from UDOT that both directions of I-80 are closed for the presidential motorcade. So that is ongoing right now. So, of course, if you are in Utah and you expect to travel up Parley's Canyon, this is going to be a major impact. So the closure will be from Foothill Drive all the way up to Park City. So UDOT is asking people to use alternate routes. And it seems, Max, you were right. Mm-hmm. It seems that they thought that Parley's Canyon would be faster to get the president to Park City for that fundraising event.
Well, to all those people who are planning to fish at Jordanelle or Mountain Dell, you have my apologies for being right. Because you're not getting there over Parley's, and alternate routes from Parley's mean a couple of extra hours in order to get where you're going.
Yep.
But that's, it's funny, Spencer, because we can laugh and joke about the presidential motorcade home game and Google Maps, because we live in a place where that doesn't happen very much. And so it's a temporary headache. If you have a friend or a loved one who lived in D.C. at any point in their life, or lived in another major city where these motorcades come more regularly, ooh, it's not a fun thing for them. It is just one of those headaches of daily life.
Yeah, and I don't know how long this closure will last for. Obviously, presidential motorcade's still behind me, and of course we'll be here live when it takes off, but most of the time these motorcades drive very quickly. Obviously they have a police escort with many motorcycle officers that ride out in front of them and clear a path. So most likely, I hope this closure won't affect too many of you watching out there today. Obviously, anytime a presidential motorcade runs through town, as we've been talking about, there's going to be traffic. No movement yet out here The press corps is still waiting inside. These transit vans still empty right now. There are still a lot of members of the VA staff, University of Utah students out here. They've got their phones up. They are trained on the exact maybe 2 feet window that they might be able to get a shot of the president, or at least his vehicle leaving the scene. It's pretty funny to see, people go, "Oh, is that him?" And I can hear in my ear that, he was still inside. So a lot of people out here still waiting, still looking to get that shot.
Yeah, it's pretty amazing. By the way, from what you were saying, we do have a live picture that we can show you of the entrance to Parley's Canyon, or just as you approach the entrance to Parley's Canyon, and the traffic already backing up there. It is the middle of the day. The lunch hour is not typically the time where you see that kind of slowdown as people are approaching Parley's Canyon, but there's a reason for that. And I don't think that is something that really assuages all the people who are stuck there or who will be stuck there, but that is what's going on. As you can see, that traffic back up, and that happening amidst the usual summer construction season as well. One thing that we're noticing inside the room there, as the president, he's making his way from our screen perspective from left to right across the room, and he's getting closer to the far end, the far right side of that room, and finally he will exit and get to that motorcade. But you can see that the governor has been standing by and waiting as the president makes his way towards him. So Governor Spencer Cox right there in the presence of the president, and his wife Abby Cox is close by. As we've seen, she's obscured right now by the president's agents, but they're still there waiting for the president, and now the governor is ready to talk with him, although the president is there talking with the First Lady to begin with here. As we can see, let's go to Bob Evans, who is in that room as we speak. Bob.
Yeah, Max, the president and the First Lady of Utah and the governor are taking a picture now, smiling, each one of them, happy to be together on this occasion. And I suspect this will be the last stop for the governor with the president, seeing as though the president will leave from here and go to a fundraiser up in Park City. I don't imagine the governor is going to accompany him to
Bipartisanship only goes so far, Bob. I don't think the governor goes in to the president's fundraiser, huh?
No, but as the president continues to linger, it's been a good 20 minutes, almost 30 minutes since the end of his speech, and he is still surrounded by at least 40 or 50 people as he works his way toward the back of the auditorium here, or actually it's a gymnasium, and he is.
You're in a
posing
gymnasium.
For pictures now with the governor again.
I had no
Say
idea.
again?
Boy, they make a gymnasium look pretty for photos, because from our perspective, I had no idea that you were in a gym. You could start shooting hoops after the president leaves, huh?
Well, actually, the risers are right up by the hoops, and there are plenty of photographers who could have been dunking the basketball right behind them. But no, the White House advance team is very good at putting together a beautiful setting for any time the president comes to town. And that's what they have done here, complete with lots of American flags and banners and the seal of the president and the whole thing. So they do this on a regular basis, so they know what they're doing, and they make it very nice.
And to take a step back from the politics of this whole thing, as the president is greeting everybody, of course, that's something that he is choosing to do. The Secret Service, he could tell his people before the speech, hey, I want to get out of here quickly, make sure that I don't look unfriendly as I shake a couple hands and then get going. They would make that happen. So clearly he's made a choice to do this, and he's a personable guy. We've talked about that. At the same time, the politics of a trip like this include that horrible word optics, but it's just a way that people view what's happening. And honestly, the local TV coverage is something that they're thinking about. They know that when they go outside of the bubble from Washington, that it's news that the president is in Utah or New Mexico or Arizona. And so the president is going to be shown in a light that's different from just seeing the 2-minute story on the news that also includes people talking about how they disagree with the president. And so they take this opportunity, and that's something that they're thinking about, the fact that you at home are seeing the president in this way, and that we're covering him because it is news. The president of the United States coming to town is real news. And they're probably also thinking not just about our viewers in Utah, but of course our market covers a big swath of Nevada, which is always a swing state, and they're probably thinking some about that, and our viewers in Idaho and Wyoming as well, although those are red states. But they're thinking through what this looks like, and they know that as he's doing this, he'll have cameras focused on him.
Yeah, absolutely, Max. And as we discussed before, the president and his campaign staff are well aware of how Donald Trump is polling here in Utah. They're well aware of the breadth and depth of the Republican ticket, and they see very clearly that there is an opportunity here in Utah to make some real ground. And so the president taking time to be personable, and especially at the end of this 3-day trip out west, for him to continue to shake hands and greet and be friendly with the audience, regardless of their party. And I've seen plenty of Republicans here as well as Democrats. His ability to do that can only be scoring him points politically in a way that nothing else could. No amount of ad campaigns, no amount of speeches given, no amount of any other kind of activity other than pressing the flesh here in Utah could get him the political capital here that he would need, and that any Democrat would need going into another presidential election.
And you know that every selfie that he is taking out there is, if it's not already, it's going to be on Instagram by the end of the day, and on Facebook, and X, I suppose it's called now, but that will multiply that way as well with some good thoughts. But we're going to go out to our colleague Bob Spencer outside of the VA. Spencer, talking about the substance of this event here, the veterans and the policies that the president was speaking of. You talked with some important policy folks who have traveled with the president.
Absolutely, yeah. I've talked with the undersecretaries for health and the undersecretary for benefits underneath the Veterans Affairs. And basically, they are the two people that are in charge of essentially the two sides of the VA, the health side of it and the benefits side of it. So those two sides obviously work very closely together, but one of the main things both of them stressed is this isn't partisan. Helping our veterans is not partisan. The PACT Act, a bipartisan bill.